Phase 4 of Season of Discovery is finally here, meaning we can get to level 60. But how are we going to play as an Affliction Warlock? Well, let's find out. The first thing we need to look at is, of course, our stat priority. And the most important stat priority is going to be making sure we can hit the boss with our spells. We do need 16% on Molten Core bosses, as they are 3 levels above us. One thing to note here is that we do have a talent called Suppression. This gives us 2% hit on our Affliction spells only, I must add, up to 10%, meaning on Affliction at least there's only 6% to go. There are some new cheeky runes out this phase though that are going to help us. Then it's just going to be pure flat out spell power. Can be fire, can be shadow, really doesn't matter too much. Spell power is the one to get. After that, of course, it's crit chance, meaning we have a higher chance to do some critical strikes. We do have a talent called Ruin, which massively increases the crit damage of our destruction spells. Just like earlier, I said the hit chance is only improved for Affliction. Well, with the Ruin talent, it's only on destruction. And we are going to be using a bit of both trees as an Affliction Warlock. After that will be Intellect, a pretty standard stat for all casters, which gives us more mana and a small percent chance to crit as well. We do have Life Tap, remember, meaning we're not too concerned about mana, as some other classes may be, but it's still a nice to have. And really, after that, I would just try and get some extra stamina. For the talents we're going to go with, I like to start off by getting Improved Corruption, reducing the casting time of that spell. And hold on a second, if you're not sure what any of these spells mean, don't worry, we're going over the full rotation in detail shortly. I won't, however, be going into the talents in excruciating detail like I do in previous phases. That is because in previous phases we were not at max level and we were at different level bands, meaning the talent trees were a bit different. I have got playlists on my channel for level 25, 40 and 50 in phase 1, 2 and 3, etc. if you should want to check those out and you are still leveling. Basically, Improved Corruption gets you an instant cast Corruption, and Suppression is the hit chance one I was talking about, getting some more, you guessed it, hit chance on our Affliction spells. Improved Life Tap increases the amount we get from Life Tap, and Improved Drain Life increases the health drained from that spell as well. We've got Amplify Curse on a 3-minute cooldown, increasing the effect of our Curse of Weakness or Agony and our next Curse of Exhaustion by 20%, and that lasts 30 seconds. Nightfall is a really interesting one, giving our Corruption and Drain Life spells, 2 we've already spoken about, a 4% chance to cause us to enter a Shadow Trance. Then, the Shadow Trance reduces the casting time of the next Shadow Bolt by 100%, making it instant. Apart from that, Improved Curse of Agony increases the damage from that spell, Grim Reach increases the range of our Affliction spells, Siphon Life transfers 15 life from the target to the caster, and Shadow Mastery increases damage dealt or life drained by our Shadow spells by 10%. We're not actually going to go down into Dark Pact, we're then going to go over to Destruction, further improving our Shadow Bolt. Don't forget about Nightfall, where we can get an instant Shadow Bolt. Well, with Improved Shadow Bolt as well, our Shadow Bolt critical strikes increase shadow damage dealt to the target by 20% until 4 non-periodic damage sources are applied, and that can last up to 12 seconds. Bane is going to reduce the cast time of some of our spells. Firebolt will actually reduce the casting time of our Imp's Firebolt. And Devastation increases the crit chance of our destruction spells by a whopping 5%. We do have this point over here in this new spell, Shadowburn. More on this in the rotation. It's basically a finisher that we can use on the boss. And lastly, Ruin. That's the one I spoke about before in the stat priority with crit. This is the talent that increases massively the damage of our destruction critical spells. And lastly, Destructive Reach, increasing their range. Now on to the runes, my favourite bit. Starting off with the head rune here, it's Pandemic, my favourite one of all. As you can see in Affliction, and as Affliction has always been, we're using a lot of dots or damage over time spells. Pandemic means that they can now be critical strikes. Usually dots cannot crit, but now they can with the Pandemic rune. Amazing, please do take it on the head rune. On the chest rune, it's Master Channeler. This actually effectively removes the channeling part of Drain Life and makes it a dot instead. Absolutely phenomenal and is mandatory. We're basically getting rid of some channeling time and adding in an extra dot that we can put on our target. Unstable Affliction, another dot we're putting up. It's the only real wrist choice we have, and we should be keeping this up at all times. The hand rune, we're going for Haunt, unleashing a ghostly soul upon your enemy and increasing all shadow damage over time that you deal by 20% to that target. Speaks for itself. We want to keep that up at all times on the target to do that extra shadow damage. When the haunt ends, you will be healed for all the damage it's also dealt to your target. So woohoo for us. A big double whammy. Because Grimoire of Synergy was recently nerfed, we now go for Shadow and Flame on the Waste rune. Your critical strikes with fire and shadow spells increase your fire and shadow damage done by another 10% for 10 seconds. Again, another passive effect that's going to increase our damage done. Everlasting Affliction on the leg. You can also go for Demonic Pact if you like. If you are the only Warlock, I would say probably go for Demonic Pact. However, Everlasting Affliction is a better DPS increase for you. Not massive though, do take that into account. Basically, some of your dots refresh the duration of your corruption on the target back to its maximum duration, meaning you can use a global cooldown on not on corruption more often, and giving you a little bit of time back. So you can see there how it's only a small DPS increase. Demonic Pact, your pet's critical strikes apply the Demonic Pact effect to your party and raid members, increasing spell damage by 10% of your spell damage, whichever is higher. So obviously we want to use this. If there's another Warlock using it in the raid, then we won't use it. It would be a waste. Again, with the recent nerf to Demonic Knowledge, we're going for Shadow Flame. Burning the enemy for Shadow Flame and then an additional amount over 15 seconds. Dots, 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 and more dots in Affliction right now, which I love. Shadow Flame triggers and benefits from anything that's going to interact with or immolate or Affliction, Destruction, Fire, or Shadow spells. So quite a lot of things, really. But you can only have one Immolate or Shadow Flame per Warlock on the target at any time. Soul Siphon has also had a rework, and I actually really enjoy it. Causes your drained soul to deal damage 3 times faster and increase the amount drained by your drain life and drain soul spells by an additional 6% for each of your Warlock shadow effects afflicting the target, up to a maximum of 18 effect. There's a lot of different passives and things going on here. Don't worry if you're getting overwhelmed. I will be explaining the full single target and AoE rotation shortly. If you do put this on a target below 20% health, it instead gains 50% per effect, up to a maximum of 150, and it's really, really good and fun to use, of course. Lastly, the ring and ring rune, we're going for fire and shadow specialization. These quite simply help us with our hit chance on both of those specializations, and they should be used pretty much at all times. There's nothing else we're going to be using there. Let's now have a look at how it all comes together into the actual core rotation. So first things first, before you go into combat, pre-pop your Amplify Curse. If you've forgotten what that does, it increases the effect of your next curse on the target, basically. And then after that, if you are a bit of a min-maxer, you can pre-cast your Shadow Bolt so that it hits the target as the pull timer reaches 0. Just be careful not to do this too early, or you may take some fret. Then make sure your Imp's attacking, and then use your Curse of Recklessness. That's the one we're using with our Amplify here. After that, we're using Haunt. Don't forget that when you do use Haunt, it's going to increase the shadow damage done to the target by 20%, meaning we do want to use this at the start of our rotation and keep it up whenever possible. Then we're going to put all of our dots on the target. Unstable Affliction, Drain Life, Corruption. Then we're going to use our Shadow Bolt. If we're waiting for any dots to refresh or to be reapplied, that is when we will be using the Shadow Bolt. Basically, get your curses and your haunt out, making sure that you're doing as much damage as possible. Then use your Unstable Affliction, Drain Life, and Corruption to get your dots on to make, impact of those buffs that we now have, using Shadow Bolt as a filler while we're waiting to need to refresh our dots on the target. And if you're not going to be able to get a full cast of Shadow Bolt off, then use Drain Soul instead. Ideally, we are going to be using Shadow Bolt and not Drain Soul. Again, just if we're, moving a lot, it's going to die. We're not going to get a full Shadow Bolt off, then use Drain Life instead. After that, we want to use our Shadow Burn to finish off the boss as an execute. Do be aware, however, this does use a soul shard, so you will need to use one or keep one for that. That's pretty much it for the main single target rotation. Again, keep Haunt up as much as possible, keep your dots up as much as possible, use your Shadow Bolt as a filler, use Drain Soul if you aren't going to get a full Shadow Bolt off, and use Shadow Burn as a execute. For AoE, it's very simple. Basically, use your Corruption on your mobs to fish for Nightfall procs. If you've forgotten what they are, that is fishing for an instant cast of your Shadow Bolt. Apart from that, use Shadow Bolt Volley and you are ready to go. And that is pretty much it for Affliction Warlock in this phase. Now, if you would like any extra help on Affliction or any other class, head over to my Patreon. I can help you one-on-one in DMs over there on a more personal basis, along with getting access to a VIP channel in the Discord where where you have access to a lot of class experts in Classic and Retail, as well as getting Elf UI profiles, WoW spreadsheets, and also behind-the-scenes guides that nobody else gets. And if you are looking for just a basic old guide for any other class, check out this playlist for this phase, as I have done them all for you.